Regent of the Sick Tuberculosis vs Princess Chongxi, returning with cute treasure 5 years later, holding a heavy army and wielding power, the Regent of Tianxia, who was not close to women, was once again poisoned and almost died this time. When the people were worried that there was no successor in the palace, a small group just like the regent was sent to the door of the palace. They only then remembered that 5 years ago, when the regent was poisoned for the first time, his illegitimate daughter was kidnapped by his family to congratulate him. Because she sympathized with the same illness, she worked hard to detoxify him, but on the day he woke up, she was persecuted by the royal family and mysteriously disappeared. At this moment, a certain prince saw Xuanzi and his eyes darkened. But your mother's old affection for me is unforgettable, and you have come to recognize your ancestors and return to your ancestors. Xuanzi gritted his teeth and said, "No. In a few days, the little Marquis of Western Chu will marry Princess Chang, who is my mother. My mother asked me to come and see if you have died. Don't die on the day she gets married, it's unlucky." As the words fell, a sick prince lifted up his blanket, picked up the small ball, and strode out. "Don't worry, the Japanese king won't die if your mother gets married, after all. I still have to go and snatch the marriage." Keywords of the novel. After 5 years of runaway marriage, I ran into the arms of the prince with my child without a pop-up window. After 5 years of runaway marriage, I ran into the arms of the prince with my child and downloaded the complete text. After 5 years of runaway marriage, I ran into the arms of the prince with my child and read the latest chapter. Chapter 1. Forced Marriage Substitution. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Forced Marriage Substitution. Say, will you marry or not? With a hooked whip, Yu Yunxi's back, pressed to the ground by someone, was torn apart and blood stained his plain long skirt red. "I won't go to celebrate," Yu Yunxi said to Chen with difficulty, her hair disheveled and looking extremely disheveled. "Ah, you are just a concubine of the Prime Minister's mansion, destined to be a concubine. Now that you are going to give the regent Wang Chongxi, it is my wife who has recommended you and brought you a good marriage." Chen leaned down and lifted Yu Yunxi's delicate chin. This little slut's face, just like her mother's, is a fox-like appearance, making people want to destroy it immediately. When the imperial edict was issued in the palace, it was clear that the national teacher was interested in my younger sister's birth date, so this good marriage should belong to her, right? Yu Yunxi, holding her painful wound and gasping for breath, asked back, with no compromise in her eyes, only stubbornness and resistance. "Pa!" Another whip fell, causing Yu Yunxi's back to ache to the point of tingling. "Your sister is the future crown princess, how can she marry a dying person? If you don't want to get on the sedan chair, your wet nurse will die now." Chen Shi sneered contemptuously. Puff, Yu Yunxi spat out a mouthful of blood, and finally nervousness appeared on her face. "What are you going to do to the wet nurse?" After her mother passed away for many years, the wet nurse was the only person in the world who treated her well. She can't let the wet nurse have anything to do. If you obediently get on the sedan chair, my wife will invite a doctor for your sick nurse, otherwise. I can get married. Yu Yunxi clenched her fists, her voice audible, but she eventually compromised. You were so obedient earlier. I have conditions. Firstly, Yu Fu needs to take good care of the wet nurse. Secondly, return the jade pendant that my mother left me back then. Yu Yunxi stubbornly looked at Chen Shi and said his conditions word by word. Before her mother's death, she repeatedly reminded her that the jade pendant was very special and could save her life in critical moments. After their mother's death, Chen came to their yard and stole everything, even the jade pendant could not be spared. Chen laughed contemptuously upon hearing this and said, "It's just a worthless piece of warm jade. What if it's in my wife's hands? Will my wife still be greedy for it? If one of the two conditions cannot be met, you won't let me get on the sedan chair." Yu Yunxi spoke forcefully. Although Chen can threaten her with a wet nurse, she is not someone who easily compromises. If you hesitate any longer, if you find something fishy in the regent's mansion, you won't be able to live peacefully. It will be worth having the entire prime minister's mansion bury the wet nurse and me." Yu Yunxi's voice became much colder. "Enough," Chen stared angrily at Yunxi. She didn't expect that this illegitimate woman, who had always been under her control, would now have the courage to threaten her. However, the Empress Dowager is indeed urging her urgently. Taking a deep breath, Chen resisted the urge to kill Yu Yunxi and shouted at her servants, "Why don't you hurry and go get the jade pendant?" When the jade pendant was brought, the servant next to her took the opportunity to tie Yu Yunxi's hand, and her mouth was also covered with a cloth. Soon a dizziness struck and her consciousness gradually withdrew. Immediately after, outside the Prime Minister's mansion, there was a commotion of gongs and drums, and she was dressed in a wedding dress and carried onto a sedan chair. Half a month ago, the ninth brother of the emperor, the war god prince highly respected by the people of the heavenly Xia kingdom, was ambushed and fell asleep for a long time. The national teacher said that he must find a woman who matches his birth date and 8 characters to congratulate him, so that he can possibly wake up. They chose the birth date of the legitimate daughter of the Prime Minister's mansion, Yu Wanrong, but the people of the Prime Minister's mansion insisted that the birth date was from the illegitimate daughter, Yu Yunxi. A chill struck, and I was awakened by the cold on Yunxi. She opened her eyes and found that she had been casually thrown onto the ground. The wound was in excruciating pain, and she wanted to check her condition with her hands, only to find that they were still tied. She stood up as she moved her body, looked up, and in her eyes were the bright red characters of happiness, red candles, and red curtains. There is still a man wearing a red groom's uniform lying on the bed. She hesitated for a moment, but finally leaned over to take a look. But with just one glance, she lost her mind. The opponent's face had a flawless contour and a tall nose. Even though they were lifeless now, it was hard to conceal the murderous aura they had once possessed. "He is the Regent Feng Yili, and I will replace him as the husband of Chongxi." After regaining consciousness, Yu Yunxi murmured softly, "Miss, please keep your mouth shut and speak on your behalf. Don't say such words in the future. The only thing that the national teacher values is your birth date and 8 characters. You are the regent princess." At this moment, a cold female voice came in. Yu Yunxi turned around and saw a woman with an unpleasant expression walking out from behind the screen. "Qinggu." Yu Yunxi's face slightly changed. "The person in front of me is one of Chen's confidants, Qinggu. She has been helping Chen with dirty things for many years. Why is she here? You have had no upbringing and no understanding of rules since you were young. Madam is worried that you will implicate the Prime Minister's mansion, so she asked the maidservant to marry with you in order to help you," said Aunt Qing with disdain. "Help? It's surveillance, right?" Upon hearing this, Yu Yunxi only wanted to sneer. "Mississippi no, princess. Although the prince is half dead, the regent's mansion still has so many eyes on you. Their attitude towards you depends on the Prime Minister's mansion, so if you want to do anything unfavorable to the Prime Minister's mansion, you must first weigh it." Qinggu disdainfully glanced at Feng Yili lying in bed, then walked over to help Yu Yunxi untie the rope. Yu Yunxi lowered his eyes and did not speak. Aunt Qing didn't mean to let her go. She stared at the jade pendant that she accidentally exposed. "Madam said, the jade pendant should be kept by the servant for you first." As she spoke, she reached out to grab the jade pendant. Anger flashed in Yu Yunxi's eyes. They actually want to continue controlling her. She quickly retreated and dodged Aunt Qing's hand. She wanted to continue dodging, but only made a few moves when the wound behind her cracked open, causing her to sweat profusely and struggle to move. In a moment of anxiety, her spare time swept over Feng Yili on the bed, and she quickly stuffed the jade pendant into his clothes. Qinggu still wanted to grab it, but she shouted loudly, "Qinggu, this is the regent. Are you sure you want to offend him? I heard that he became like this because of poisoning, and I don't know if it will be contagious." Upon hearing these words, Aunt Qing's face suddenly changed and she quickly covered her mouth and nose, retreating. Qinggu, it's now the wedding night between me and the prince. Are you sure you want to keep an eye on it? Yu Yunqi asked in a secluded tone. Qinggu angrily glanced at Feng Yili on the bed, then at Yu Yunqi. Finally, she could only grit her teeth and say, that servant is here to congratulate the princess and the prince on having a beautiful wedding and giving birth to a young son. After speaking, she brushed her sleeves and pushed the door out. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Yu Yunqi looked out and found many guards guarding the yard. The Prime Minister's mansion is holding the wet nurse, and the Regent's mansion has so many guards. I really can't escape, she joked to herself. The pain on her body made her even more exhausted. She touched her waist and found a medicine bottle. She breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately she has had the habit of carrying medicine with her over the years. She quickly fed herself a few pills, and the pain on her body finally eased a little. Turning around, she looked at Feng Yili on the bed and quickly reached out to grab his clothes. His body was very cold, and the jade pendant was placed right in his heart, warming up everything there. My mother's jade pendant has returned to my hands. Yu Yun gently wiped the jade pendant, feeling grateful. She didn't notice at all that when she picked up the jade pendant, Feng Yili's cold fingers twitched slightly. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Sacrifice. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Sacrifice. Queen, it's time for you to get up. A wicked voice came from outside the door. Yu Yunqi's sleep was already shallow, and upon hearing this sound, she quickly opened her eyes after sleeping on the soft collapse all night. She glanced not far away and saw that Feng Yili was still lying motionless on the bed. All of this is not a dream, she really married him. With a sigh, she walked to the door and slowly opened it. At this moment, an old lady stood at the door with a towering posture. Empress Dowager, did your mistress not teach you the rules when you were at the Prime Minister's mansion? You should wake up at dawn to serve your elders and take care of your husband. The old lady spoke thinly, her face trembling with flesh. Sorry, the mistress of our Prime Minister's mansion doesn't like to teach illegitimate women. Also, what is a rule? The rule of the regent's mansion is that servants can shout at their masters. Yu Yunqi's eyes flashed with a cold light, and he calmly responded. You. The old lady widened her eyes, unable to believe that she had been refuted. She is the mother that the Empress Dowager trusts the most. Who in the Wang mansion dares not respect her? Yu Yunqi was just the daughter of a concubine in the Prime Minister's mansion. Her mother died early, and Prime Minister Yu didn't like her either. She was inferior to even servants in the mansion's status. If it weren't for the match between her birth date and the prince, she wouldn't have taken half a step into the prince's mansion with her humble identity in this lifetime. She called her princess. Did she really take herself seriously? After getting married, one should remember etiquette and not bring shame to the mother clan. This is Lu Mama next to the Empress Dowager, and neither she nor the Empress Dowager can be disrespected by you. The green ant next to her finally had a reaction. She looked up and warned Yu Yunqi in an unfriendly tone. Ha! Yu Yunqi raised her hand and covered her mouth with a smile, then said slowly, did my queen do something wrong? As a maid, Lu Mama was shouting and yelling at my queen at the prince's doorstep. She was the one who didn't respect the prince and the Empress Dowager, right? Princess, don't spit blood on anyone. If the servant reports your slanderous words to the Empress Dowager, you will not feel well. Lu Mama narrowed her cloudy eyes and warned. You can go report it. I want to see if the Empress Dowager is protecting you or the prince. Since ancient times, no servant has ever been able to act recklessly at the master's doorstep. Do you think the Empress Dowager was easy to bully when she first entered the mansion, or do you think the prince is not worthy of respect now that he is sleeping? Yu Yunqi raised his eyebrows and eyes slightly, his voice becoming colder and colder. Lu Mama's expression stiffened and her heart was pounding. She never expected that Yu Yunxi, a despicable girl, would dare to threaten her with the prince's affairs. The Empress Dowager trusts her, but if the matter involves the prince, she would rather kill the wrong person than let it go. Especially the prince is now unable to sleep, and the Empress Dowager is feeling sad and restless. Any slight mistake will cause harm to others. After thinking about it, she instantly changed her face. With a slight blessing on her body, she said in a soft voice, "The Empress Dowager has spoken before. I'm just worried that you might miss the time, so I'm in a hurry to remind you. It's getting late, why don't you wash up the prince quickly? I'll have to feed him medicine later. Are you trying to push this matter over?" Yu Yunxi raised his eyebrows without making a statement, but allowed the other maids to come in carrying toiletries. "Princess, please." Lu Mama handed the handkerchief to Yu Yunxi and stared at her. Yu Yunxi didn't panic either. The wet nurse had been bedridden for many years, and the servants didn't care about their life or death. Therefore, she started taking care of the wet nurse at a very young age, so now she is also adept at taking care of Feng Yili. She quickly wiped Feng Yili's face and arms, and Lu Mama stared intently, but she couldn't pick out any mistakes. "Go find new clothes for the prince to change into." Looking at Feng Yili's groom's clothes, Yu Yunxi felt extremely eye-catching and decided to take them off as soon as possible. "But who knew?" Lu Mama said in a gloomy tone, "Princess, didn't the people from the Prime Minister's mansion tell you? The national teacher said that the prince's situation is extremely dangerous this time, so he needs to be overjoyed. If you have a lucky person, the prince can wake up within a 7-day period. If you can't wake up, you will have to go to the imperial tomb with the prince in 7 days. You will still wear this wedding dress when the time comes." "What?" Yu Yunxi suddenly looked up, his eyes urgent as he looked at Aunt Qing. And Qinggu glanced away at other places. Judging from her appearance, it is obvious that she knows the truth. Originally, it's not just about ecstasy, but also about being buried. No wonder Lu put in a lot of effort to send her to the sedan chair. Yu Yunxi's eyes became indifferent, and his heart was filled with anger. Despite knowing that she might have come to die, the people in the Prime Minister's office did not hesitate to push her out, and even concealed her intention to be buried. Looking at Yu Yunxi's expression, Lu Mama warned in a warning tone, "Princess, you'd better pray that you are a blessed person who can awaken our prince. If not, the Empress Dowager will skin and bone you." Yu Yunxi took a deep breath and her eyes met Lu Mama coldly, saying, "Didn't you say you wanted to feed the prince medicine? Where's the medicine?" At this point, she can only pray that Feng Yili can truly wake up. "Someone, bring medicine to the queen." A bowl of cold and pitch-black medicine was brought to Yu Yunxi's face, and she reached out to take it. "Princess, don't blame the servant for not reminding you. The lord is in a coma and can't drink at all. Usually, he depends on the imperial doctor to give him acupuncture and moxibustion to hang his life. But the imperial doctor said that his body is getting weaker and weaker, and he must drink medicine. This is the medicine carefully prescribed by the imperial doctor. Every time the lord is injured, he takes this medicine. You should think of a way to feed the lord." Mammy Lu said in a strange voice. Yu Yunxi almost laughed in anger. How can a regent king take medicine from his body, but his mouth cannot be opened, and even the imperial doctors cannot allow the medicine to be taken from his mouth? Isn't this forced by others? In the room, several pairs of watching eyes stared at Yunxi like this. After some thought, her eyes slightly turned. She put the medicine aside, supported Feng Yili's chin with one hand, and pressed several acupoints on his head with the other hand. A magical scene happened, and Feng Yili's mouth opened unexpectedly. And she quickly poured the medicine into her hands and eyes. The incident happened too quickly, and it took Lu Mama and others a while to realize. Lu Mama, who had regained her senses, glared angrily at Yu Yunxi and said, "What have you done to the prince?" My queen is just feeding medicine to the prince, the effect is very good. Why should Lu Mama be nervous? Yu Yunxi responded calmly. Princess, how did you do all this? Qinggu's probing gaze fell on Yunxi. Yu Yunxi patted her palm and sarcastically said, Qinggu must have forgotten that my mother was a famous doctor back then. She also cured my father's stubborn illness, but unfortunately, he didn't remember his old love later on. As my mother's daughter, how about I have some medical skills? Do you know medical skills? Lu Mama's voice suddenly became a bit sharp. Yu Yunxi frowned slightly at her reaction. It's just some simple medical skills, small injuries and small pains, you can pry open a person's mouth, and other serious illnesses don't have this ability. She tugged at the corner of her mouth and calmly responded. She had been observing Lu Mama all along and found that the other party was clearly relieved when she finished speaking. Is this reaction a bit strange? Alright, the prince's clothes don't need to be changed, but you have to change your own clothes to meet the Empress Dowager, said Lu Mama arrogantly, raising her face. Do you still need to go see the Empress Dowager? Yu Yunxi frowned, but couldn't refuse. Princess, give the medicine bowl to the servant. Lu Mama still stared at the bowl in her hand. Okay, take it. Yu Yunxi nodded calmly and handed the bowl over. But when the bowl was handed over, she secretly grabbed some medicine residue and hid it in her handkerchief. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Empress Dowager's Difficulty. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Empress Dowager's Difficulty. When Yu Yunxi arrived at the front hall, he saw an old woman sitting there in plain clothes. She closed her eyes, rolled a Buddhist pearl in her hand, and muttered words. She should be Concubine Ning, who was once favored in the harem, but now she is Concubine Ning. Upon hearing the commotion, Concubine Ning slowly opened her eyes and gazed at Yu Yunxi with a scrutinizing gaze. Yunxi has seen the Empress Dowager before. Yu Yunxi blessed his body and politely bowed. What else is it called, Tai Fei? It's called, Mother Fei. Yesterday's wedding was too hasty, I've wronged you. Ning Tai Fei waved to her in a very gentle tone. Yu Yunxi couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Does the Empress Dowager have such a kind temper toward someone from a humble background? With her eyes lowered and her doubts suppressed, she slowly walked to the other person's side. Good child, my mother must have been very resistant to you marrying into the regent's mansion when she found out. Ning Tai Fei took Yu Yunxi's hand and patted the back of her hand tenderly. Yu Yunxi's expression became strange. So, is Princess Ning planning not to let her be buried? But suddenly, Concubine Ning's tone changed. Since you have entered the regent's mansion, it is your fate. If Leo cannot awaken due to your blessings, then you can only go underground to explore his way first. Her eyebrows and eyes also flashed with a murderous aura. Upon hearing this, Yu Yunxi felt extremely helpless in her heart. Fortunately, she had just realized that Empress Ning was kind-hearted. It turned out to be just her illusion. Compared to her sons, the lives of others in the other party are simply insignificant. Princess, it's time to offer tea to the Empress Dowager, Lu Mama reminded in an unfriendly tone beside her. Yu Yunxi was extremely helpless, but still reached out to pick up the tea and slowly knelt down. Mother, please have some tea. Concubine Ning gave her a deep glance and found that there was nothing wrong with her etiquette, so she was willing to take the tea. After taking a sip of tea, she remembered something and began to coldly remind, you are an illegitimate daughter of the Prime Minister's mansion. You have not been taught since childhood, and your etiquette is definitely not as good as that of a legitimate daughter of a noble family. However, the AI family still hopes that you remember your current identity and not bring shame to the regent's mansion. Also, her voice raised slightly, and her eyes became somewhat unfriendly. Don't follow the behavior of your lowly mother. I heard that your mother comes from a merchant's family and comes from Jiangnan, with a lowly status. After becoming the aunt of the Prime Minister's mansion, she even dares to collude with the guards. If it weren't for that, your father wouldn't have disliked your mother and daughter so much. My mother has never done anything that goes too far. Yu Yinshi, who had just been extremely gentle, suddenly looked up and coldly interrupted Ning Taifei's words. Her body trembled slightly, and under her long sleeves, her fingers curled up into fists. My mother was framed back then. My mother is such a good person, but she can't wait to be properly named even after being forcibly poisoned or thrown into a mass grave. Oh, how dare you speak up? The AI family just gave you some kindness, for the sake of Lear. Since you have become the daughter-in-law of the AI family, you must listen to the instructions of the AI family. If it weren't for your despicable mother who saved Taizu back then, do you think you could have lived peacefully in the Prime Minister's mansion until now? The Empress Dowager sneered and her face became somewhat gloomy. Mother consort, Yunshi had heard that the prince was a towering hero before coming to the palace. Yunshi thought that as the prince's mother consort, you should also be a person who knows right from wrong. You would never listen to others' words, listen to the wind, listen to the rain, listen to the rain. Yu Yinshi took a deep breath and stood up from the ground, speaking word by word. Bold, are you saying that the AI family doesn't distinguish right from wrong? Empress Ning narrowed her eyes and anger appeared on her face. My mother, who has been in the harem for many years, should be the terrifying means of framing. My mother has come from Jiangnan, and her family has long passed away, but the dowry she brings far exceeds that of many female relatives in the capital. Moreover, she also has medical skills and often visits the palace to see Emperor Taizu, which is highly appreciated by Emperor Taizu. In this way, it is normal for her to cause jealousy from others and be ambushed by others. Your mother, seeing may not necessarily be true, let alone hearing. Yu Yunshi's words became increasingly sad and indignant. Her mother is the best mother, she never allows anyone to tarnish her reputation. Shut up. Princess Ning slammed the table in anger. Just as she was about to give the order to applaud, a loud shout came from outside. Your Majesty has spoken. Upon hearing this, she could only suppress her plan to teach Yunshi a lesson. She spoke harshly, someone has arrived in the palace. Please be clever to the AI family and don't embarrass the Wang family. Otherwise, the AI family will not be lenient. Soon, several figures appeared at the door. Grandma Lu quickly helped Empress Ning up. Empress Dowager, how could I trouble you to get up? Please sit down quickly. The person who came was Duke Linda. As a popular figure around the emperor, he was a personal genius. As soon as he entered, he went straight to Princess Ning. Ijia is fine. Concubine Ning shook her head gently and continued speaking. Lin Gonggang, why did the emperor send you here? Report to Empress Dowager, the national teacher has sent another message. He can only return to the capital in 2 days, but he specifically ordered someone to bring the Hanyu coffin first. Linda patiently replied. Cold jade coffin. Consort Ning's face showed a suspicious expression. The national teacher told the emperor in the letter that the regent's body was weak and his soul was weak, so he wanted to put it in a coffin made of cold jade, and then nail it with long nails to gather his soul and awaken as soon as possible. Linda patiently said. No, the prince is still alive. If we put him in the coffin now, how can he breathe? Upon hearing this, Yu Yunshi felt extremely absurd and loudly discouraged her. Now, Lin's inquisitive gaze fell on her. Are you? She is a newly introduced princess. Ning Taifei angrily glanced at Yu Yunshi. That gaze was clearly accusing her of not being polite. Yunshi's words also reminded her, and she fell silent for a moment. Then she asked Linda in confusion, Lin Gonggang, that cold jade coffin is cold. If it were sealed, if there were any ups and downs with Li air inside, I would be sorry. Empress Dowager, don't worry, Linda shook his head and said calmly. As the national teacher said, the Hanyu coffin is something left for him by his master, a treasure for treating illnesses and injuries. If a person lies inside, they will only benefit. Did the national teacher really say that? Listening to Linda's words, the worry on Princess Ning's face gradually diminished. That's natural. The national teacher has always been very concerned about the situation of the regent, and this time he left the capital to find the Hanyu coffin. Then hurry up and send it to the prince so that he can lie down. Upon hearing this, Princess Ning felt like she had caught a life-saving straw, so she quickly gave the order. Yes, Empress Dowager. Linda nodded and led his men, holding long nails, carrying the Hanyu coffin towards the courtyard where Feng Yili could leave. Yu Yunxi felt a bit panicked and wanted to intervene. Noticing her thoughts, Princess Ning's face darkened. Someone, look at the queen. Without the command of the AI family, she is not allowed to step out of here. She ordered coldly. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. The prince's eyes moved. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. The prince's eyes moved. Concubine Ning followed Duke Lin and didn't forget to leave a maid staring at Yu Yunxi. There is also a green ant next to her. Being stared at by someone, Yu Yunxi was anxious but had no choice but to force herself to calm down and think about what to do. The national teacher has a high reputation in the heavenly Xia kingdom, and what he said, Empress Ning, must be unquestionable. It's strange that a living person is stuffed into a coffin for a long time without any accidents. No, she must stop it. Otherwise, Feng Yili will die and she won't be able to live either. Turning her gaze around, she suddenly let out a "whoa" sound. My queen's stomach hurts so much, so much. She covered her stomach and began to moan. The maid quickly walked over when she saw the situation. But as soon as she approached, Yu Yunxi took out a silver needle from her body and stabbed it around her neck. Soon, the person passed out in a coma. Are you crazy? Aunt Qing was furious. But Yu Yunxi looked at her coldly and said, Qinggu, if the prince is really sealed in the coffin, then he will truly become a dead person. Nonsense, the national teacher has already said that it's a cold jade coffin, as long as. Do you really treat the national teacher as a fairy? The prince has health problems, and only a doctor can save him. Playing tricks will only make him die faster, Yu Yunxi sarcastically said. So what? That's not something you should worry about, princess. Qinggu still didn't agree. Yu Yunxi looked at Qinggu and suddenly smiled. If the prince dies, it will indeed be me who died. But Qinggu, don't forget that you are the only maid I have to marry. Since ancient times, when the master was buried, how could there be a reason for maidservants to survive? Her words faded the blood from Aunt Qing's face. Madam said, she will protect the servant. This is the regent's mansion, and the prime minister's mansion cannot speak. You just saw how much Empress Dowager Ning cares about her son. If she loses her son, not to mention forcing a maid to be buried, the prime minister's mansion will also suffer. Yu Yunxi's words hit the nail on the head. Qinggu was also flustered for a moment, hesitating repeatedly and could only compromise. She spoke to Ning Yunxi and asked, so, what should that servant do? You're like this. Yu Yunxi lowered his voice and said something in Aunt Qing's ear. Quickly, Aunt Qing hurriedly ran out, and Yu Yunxi also started flipping through the window, finding a small path, and heading straight to the wedding house. When Yu Yunxi rushed over, he saw that they had arranged the Hanyu coffin and were now preparing to carry Feng Yili inside. No way. She quickly ran over and pushed several eunuchs away. Why did you come? Someone, pull the queen out. Princess Ning was furious when she saw Yu Yunxi. But Yu Yunxi held on to Feng Yili's body tightly. She lifted her head and earnestly said to Empress Ning, Mother, the prince is about to be buried in the coffin. As his wife, I want to take another look at him. But it was obvious that Empress Ning had not calmed her anger. She shook her hand and soon several old ladies came over, ready to drag Yu Yunxi out. Yu Yunxi appears calm on the surface, but his heart is very anxious. Suddenly, she shouted loudly, "Mother, look, the prince's eyes have moved." Absurdity. Empress Dowager, the imperial physicians in the palace have all said that the prince is unresponsive now and must accept help in order to possibly wake up. The Grand Tutor has instructed that the prince must be put into the coffin as soon as possible, otherwise it will be troublesome if the time is missed. Lin shouted loudly and signaled to the eunuchs around him, urging them to quickly send Feng Yili into the cold jade coffin. "Mother, the prince's eyes have really moved." Yu Yunxi wrote anxiously and sincerely. Consort Ning hesitated for a moment. She wanted to come over and see if what Yu Yunxi said was true. But Linda suddenly stood in front of her, sighing and saying, "Empress Dowager, can't you still trust Master Guosher?" Master Guosher said that entering the coffin cannot be delayed. The princess must have been talking nonsense because she couldn't bear to part with the prince. His words gave Ning Taifei a sense of clarity in her eyes. She said to Yunxi in a cold and gloomy tone, "Yu Yunxi, if you dare to interfere again, I will let your head fall now." Yu Yunxi knew that her warning was true, but she had no way out. She squeezed tears out of her eyes and choked up, saying, "Mother, you want me to die? I will die without regret, but could you please take a look? The prince has just really reacted." Perhaps it was because Yu Yunxi's appearance was too realistic, and Princess Ning hesitated for a moment. At this moment, a maid suddenly exclaimed in surprise, "Empress Dowager, it seems that the prince's eyelashes have really moved." What? At this moment, Empress Ning didn't care about anything. She pushed Linda away and ran to the bedside, just as she saw the scene of Feng Yili's eyelashes trembling lightly. She instantly turned red in the eyes and shouted, "Hurry up, go get the government doctor, no, get the imperial doctor." "Yes, Empress Dowager." Several old ladies were also pleasantly surprised, and they quickly ran out. Lind also walked to the bedside, squinting his eyes and sweeping a chill over Yu Yunxi. Sensing this coolness, Yu Yunxi's heart sank with a thud. This Lin Gonggong doesn't seem to want Feng Yili to wake up. Ning Taifei was already standing by the bed, anxiously watching Feng Yili. Yu Yunxi carefully withdrew his hand and then concealed the silver needle at his fingertips with his wide sleeve. At the critical moment just now, she bravely stabbed Feng Yili's acupoint with a silver needle, which was considered a gamble. Fortunately, she won the bet, and Feng Yili really had a reaction. However, this also confirmed her conjecture that Feng Yili should be able to fully awaken. She must find an opportunity to give Feng Yili a check-up. The imperial doctors arrived quickly, with a dozen or so people in a large crowd, and almost half of the imperial doctors from the hospital came. But after careful examination, everyone's expression was very strange. "Empress Dowager, did you really see the prince's reaction just now?" "That's natural." Even the AI family saw Li Er's eyelids twitching. The imperial physician, is Li Er of the AI family about to wake up? Ning Taifei asked urgently. "Well, Empress Dowager, I have thoroughly investigated and everything is as usual, Prince." "Could it be that you read it wrong?" the imperial physician whispered and probed. "Bold. The AI family has seen it with their own eyes, and others in the room have also seen it. How could they have misread it?" Empress Ning covered her heart and felt extremely angry. She was both angry at the imperial physician for saying she was wrong, and resentful that the implication of the physician's words was that her child could not wake up. Upon seeing this, Linda coughed lightly and then spoke with a feigned regret, "Empress Dowager, I know you want the regent to wake up soon. But the imperial doctors have done their best. Now we can only rely on the methods of the national teacher for hope." Yu Yunxi was beside her, watching these imperial doctors remain silent like quails, and her face changed with anger. She originally thought that these imperial doctors were all wise people and they would definitely stop this absurd decision. But who knew, they all tacitly agreed. So many people believe the words of a prodigy, she cursed angrily in her heart. But I can only watch as these people lift Feng Yili up and prepare to put him in the jade coffin. Just as she was anxious, the voices of the servants of the royal mansion came from outside, panicked and helpless. It's not good anymore, Empress Dowager, the ancestral temple is on fire. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Another Murderer. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Another murderer. The imperial family of the heavenly Xia kingdom has a dedicated imperial tomb, but those princes who have established royal mansions outside must set up separate ancestral halls in their mansions to serve their ancestors. Therefore, the regent's palace also has an ancestral temple. The importance of plaques in ancestral temples is no less than that in imperial tombs. So, upon hearing this, Concubine Ning instantly lost her soul and shouted angrily, "What are you still waiting for? Hurry up and go put out the fire." Linda also frowned. How can we say that the ancestral hall of the regent's mansion suddenly caught fire? Yu Yunxi breathed a slight sigh of relief upon seeing the situation. Fortunately, Aunt Qin was clever and didn't mess up the matter. She took a step forward, then knelt down to Empress Ning and earnestly asked word for word, "Mother, may it be the ancestors who are angry? Since these people believe in ghosts and gods so much, she will start with this." "What do you mean?" Ning Taifei looked over with a gloomy gaze. That way, it seemed like Yu Yunxi couldn't say why, she must have killed her. With his eyes lowered, Yu Yunxi spoke meekly, "Mother, it's true that you want the prince to wake up as soon as possible. But he should always be a living person, and living people will be tainted by bad luck when buried in a coffin. The ancestors of the royal family are concerned about the younger generation, and now that they see them being buried in a coffin, how can they feel at ease? Perhaps tonight's big fire is a reminder from the ancestors." "Princess, you're using demonic language to deceive others." Linda shouted loudly. His attitude did not regard Yu Yunxi as a princess. But Yu Yunxi ignored his attitude and continued to mournfully say to Empress Ning, "Mother, the prince is the flesh and blood you gave birth to in October. He is still a great hero who stands tall and upright. Do you really have the heart to make him curl up in that small coffin? It's so dark there, and he still needs to nail the coffin lid. How can he bear it? The ancestors are angry when they know about it." Listening to Yu Yunxi's words, Concubine Ning hesitated and glanced at Feng Yili, her eyes turning red again. The orphan of the AI family certainly does not want him to stay in that suffocating little coffin. Empress Dowager, he is a national teacher. Linda was about to be persuaded when he saw Empress Ning, and he was a bit anxious. Yu Yunxi quickly interjected, "Empress Dowager, what the national teacher said was that the Hanyu coffin has a miraculous effect on the prince, so the prince can lie down and don't need to cover the coffin. Anyway, the Hanyu coffin can have a miraculous effect, not the lid and nails." She knew the weight of the national teacher in the Empress Dowager's heart, and simply preventing it would have the opposite effect. It was better to compromise and find a relatively favorable solution. Empress Ning pressed her sore eyebrows and said wearily, "What you're saying is reasonable. Since the coffin has a miraculous effect, it's better to put Lear inside without nailing her to death. This way, Lear can breathe out and the ancestors will not be angry." Lind wanted to say something more, but he could only suppress his emotions and whispered, "This is also feasible." So, Feng Yili was carried into the cold jade coffin. "Grandma Lu, you help the AI family out. The AI family is going to see how the ancestral temple is doing, and the AI family is going to apologize to their ancestors." Empress Ning said wearily. Lu Mama quickly came to help her. Before leaving, Princess Ning gave Yu Yunxi a cold look and said, "The princess will stay in the house and take good care of the prince. Don't try to be too careful, there are guards outside the yard. The regent really married a good princess, and Yu Xiang also raised a good daughter." Linda then glanced at Yu Yunxi and, with a strange expression, left with his people. After everyone left, Yu Yunxi fell weakly beside the coffin as if drained of strength, her back soaked with sweat. Almost Fengyi is about to suffocate you in the coffin, she said with lingering fear. She didn't dare to delay for too long, gritted her teeth, and quickly got up. If Feng Yili doesn't wake up for a day, her life is still in danger. She peeled off Feng Yili's clothes and found a big wound near his heart. Although it looks serious, she doesn't think it's necessarily a fatal injury. Pulling up his wrist, she forced herself to calm down and listen carefully to his pulse. But after probing her pulse, her body stumbled for a moment. Mu Lichuan. Surprisingly, he was poisoned by Mu Lichuan's poison. This poison has been in his body for over 20 years, right? She murmured softly. Mu Lichuan is an extremely domineering poison that has been lurking for a long time and is extremely difficult to detect. When the opportunity for poisoning comes, the poisoned person will fall into a coma and gradually die. This kind of poison has been extinct for many years, and she also heard her mother talk about it when she was a child. My mother also said that there are not many people in this world who know about this kind of poison, even those palace doctors who claim to be highly skilled may not have heard of it. This poison has been lurking in Feng Yili's body for more than 20 years, which means that he became unconscious not because he was poisoned on the battlefield, but because he was poisoned when he was young. Who is it that is so ruthless in attacking a child? Suddenly remembering the medicine that Feng Yili drank, Yu Yunxi quickly took out his handkerchief, unfolded it, and sniffed the smell of the medicine residue. Soon, her eyebrows furrowed and her heart pounded like a drum. How can there be a fairy-like smell in this medicine? Tianxia, although its name sounds nice, has a warm nature, a bitter and pungent taste, enters the heart, stomach, and liver meridians, and is toxic. Long-term use can cause burning throat, redness of skin, blurred vision, and eventually become restless, convulsive, and unconscious, gradually losing breath. The most important thing is that Tianxia is a unique medicine applied externally, which is beneficial for treating external injuries. But if taken internally, it will exacerbate the poison of Mu Lichuan. By the way, she couldn't figure it out just now. Mu Lichuan had been lurking in Feng Yili's body for so many years and had never had any venom. Why did she have venom recently? Now she understood that perhaps the fairy had induced its toxicity. Her mind also remembered what Lu Mama had said. This was a carefully prepared prescription by the imperial physician in the palace, and the prince always took it every time he was injured. Is this a coincidence or is it an ulterior motive? For a moment, Yu Yunxi felt a severe headache, but her thoughts became clear. The lurking poison of Mu Lichuan, as well as the gradual pressure from Grandpa Linda just now. Perhaps someone is really trying to take Feng Yili's life in the dark. The wind is easy to leave. How many enemies do you have in the dark? Mu Lichuan may be puzzled by others, but she can give it a try. If the person in the dark wants Feng Yili's life, then she will spare no effort to save him at all costs. After all, their lives are now tied together. Determined, she took out her silver needle and began to bleed Feng Yili with acupuncture and moxibustion. After working hard for 2 hours, Feng Yili finally shed a lot of black blood from her body. Yu Yunxi breathed a long sigh of relief, feeling exhausted all over. She climbed onto the bed and fell asleep without taking off her shoes. She didn't notice at all that after she fell asleep, the person in the coffin coughed lightly. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Someone inside the house. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Someone inside the house. In the middle of the night, Yu Yunxi woke up again from the cold. She struggled to get up from the bed, her hands and feet cold. It's strange that the large Han jade coffin is not cold here. She walked quickly over there and found that Feng Yili's face was extremely pale, and her body was almost frozen stiff. She made a mistake. She only thought about him detoxifying and preventing the lid from being nailed to death, but forgot that a living person lying in such a cold coffin for a long time could easily freeze to death. They are really determined to take your life, Yu Yunxi said as she looked at Feng Yili's pale face, feeling mixed. She reached in to drag him out, but Feng Yili should be a tall man, and her strength was not enough. When he was tired, Feng Yili still lay motionless inside. No way. If this continues, even the great Luo immortal cannot save him. How about letting those people from the Wang mansion come and help? It's useless, they all worship the national teacher as a god, and it's impossible to go against his will. Yu Yunxi quickly denied this idea. Actually, there's another idea. What came to her mind, a hint of emotion flashed in her eyes. I can only take a gamble. She quickly stood up, threw a cup onto the ground, and then picked up a porcelain piece, pressing it against Feng Yili's neck. Is there anyone hiding in the dark? If you don't want your master to die, come out quickly. She gripped the porcelain and looked around with sharp eyes, unwilling to give up any corner. The powerful officials in the capital often keep many loyal secret guards. For example, her good father arranged nearly 10 secret guards outside his dormitory, fearing that others would take his life. So she was thinking, will there also be dark guards guarding Feng Yili? She couldn't believe the guards outside. But if it were the dark guard that the wind easily leaves, it would be like a confidant, barely worthy of trust. She was gambling, even if Feng Yili had an accident, he still followed people around. After a long wait, her fingers were stained with blood. Just as she was about to lose control, a black shadow flashed by. In the next moment, a sword hit her neck. The chill at his neck made people tremble. Yu Yunxi stiffened his body and glanced sideways, only to see that the other person looked 20 years old with a sense of solemnity on his body. I am. She opened her mouth, trying to explain why she did this to save Feng Yili. But before she could finish speaking, the other party quickly withdrew the sword and knelt down without hesitation. I'm sorry, Princess. I just offended you. I earnestly request that you save the prince, Jiang Ying said, and he even kowtowed to her. Are you? My subordinate's name is Jiang Ying, and he is currently the only secret guard guarding the prince's side, Jiang Ying answered seriously. Have you been guarding this courtyard all this time? Yu Yunxi remained calm and looked at him, continuing to ask. Jiang Ying nodded and continued, yes, I have been following the prince since I was 8 years old. Now that the prince is in trouble, I must guard him even more. Let's get your prince out of the coffin first. Although Yu Yunxi still had some doubts in his heart, he didn't care about so much. Jiang Ying quickly stood up from the ground and effortlessly lifted the person onto the bed. Princess, what should we do now? Jiang Ying's earnest gaze fell on Yunxi again. Yu Yunxi swiftly brought a blanket to cover Feng Yili's head, then turned to look at him and asked seriously, do you believe me that way? Are you not afraid that I'm here to harm your prince? Jiang Ying shook her head and said, Princess, I have been in the dark for the past 2 days. I know you have no intention of harming the prince. Do you have a way to suppress the poison on the prince's body, right? Yu Yunxi nodded and said quietly. There are 2 kinds of poisons on him. Tonight, I have helped him to detoxify the Tianxia poison, and Mu Lichuan also slightly suppressed it. But Mu Lichuan needs 3 times of medication and 3 times of acupuncture and moxibustion to completely eradicate it. Now I'm struggling, so I can only rely on you to find medicine. Princess, do you mean you can detoxify Mu Lichuan? Jiang Ying suddenly looked up and excitedly looked at Yu Yunxi. He originally thought she could only suppress the toxins in the prince's body. After all, the prince secretly searched for famous doctors all over the world many years ago and knew that he had been poisoned by Mu Lichuan, but he has not found a way to interpret it. Looking at Yu Yunxi's cold eyebrows and eyes, Jiang Ying couldn't help but develop trust. Perhaps she could really save the prince from danger. You may give orders, Princess. Jiang Ying nodded firmly. Okay, I'll write down all the medicinal herbs I need first. By the way, my mother left me some medical books with records of Mu Lichuan. Can you help me bring them over to your mansion? Yu Yunshi asked while searching for ink. Don't worry, princess. I will definitely handle these two matters properly, Jiang Ying quickly continued to guarantee. Watching Jiang Ying leave with a prescription, Yu Yunshi breathed a sigh of relief. Having someone to help is better than fighting alone. Turning around, as she passed by the Hanyu coffin, she touched her arm again. It was still cold. But the blankets are all at Feng Yili's place, and she can't even find something to keep warm. After hesitating for a long time by the bed, she finally overcame her coldness. Biting her teeth, she lifted the blanket and lay down inside. Feng Yili has been lying under the blanket for a long time, so his body is now warm and she can't help but approach him. Anyway, he's also unconscious now, and he doesn't know what I did, she kept comforting herself. Only in this situation can she be so close to the regent, who is rumored to have ruthlessly killed and not close to women. Looking at his impeccable face, Yu Yunshi had a momentary moment of unconsciousness. What a pity for such a good skin bag to die, she sighed lightly and then found a comfortable spot to sleep in. The next morning, Yu Yunshi felt her cheeks tingling, frowning and slowly opening her eyes. As soon as I opened my eyes, I found myself rubbing my face against Feng Yili's chest. The collar of his shirt was torn open, revealing the skin inside. She involuntarily turned her gaze away, her face flushed slightly. Fortunately, Feng Yili was in a coma. If he were awake and being treated so lightly by her, he would probably want to twist her neck. She turned around, wanting to tidy up the mess here before Lu Mama and others came over. But she soon realized something was wrong. Where are my earrings? She covered her left ear and frowned heavily. She remembers wearing earrings last night. Why did she wake up with the earring missing from her left ear? She quickly searched on the bed, but there was no trace. At this moment, Lu Mama's unfriendly voice came from outside. Princess, the Empress Dowager asked you to get up and decoct medicine for the prince. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Qinggu's Trial. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Qinggu's Trial. Yu Yunshi's face darkened. If she comes in and sees Feng Yili not lying in the cold jade coffin, she will definitely report it. Let's not worry about the earrings for now, it's important to get Feng Yili back into the coffin. Just as she was worried, Jiang Ying flipped through the window and came back. Princess, I have returned, and I have also brought back the things you requested. Jiang Ying said excitedly while wiping her sweat. As a result, the herbs and medical books he handed over were carefully examined by Yunshi and were what she wanted. She stabilized her mind and quickly said, quickly send your master back to the cold jade coffin. But that cold jade coffin is so cold. Make a blanket below, and this one, Yu Yunshi said, taking out warm jade from her own body and placing it on Feng Yili's body again. Seeing this, Jiang Ying nodded gratefully at her and quickly went to carry someone. After finishing these, Jiang Ying hid, while Yu Yunshi hid half of the medicine on himself and the other half in a cabinet with medical books, and then went to open the door. Seeing Yu Yunshi opening the door so late, Lu Mama spoke with a strange tone, her words implying a sense of probing. Princess, you opened the door so late, but what shameful thing are you doing inside? Yu Yunshi's eyes flickered for a moment. She tugged at the corner of her mouth and said calmly, the cold jade coffin has a cold aura. My queen suffered from the cold last night, so she woke up a bit late. Why, do you need to explain this matter to me and Lu Mama? Lu Mama spoke with a smile on her face and said, Your Highness, you said that you made a fool of yourself yesterday and brought shame to the prince. She will definitely punish you later. You must go and decoct medicine for the prince now. Yu Yunshi raised his eyebrows, his expression calm, but his heart was filled with joy. She was troubled by not knowing how to give Feng Yili the antidote of Mullican. No, the opportunity has come to your door by itself. When Yu Yunshi arrived at the kitchen, he found that all the servants had been driven away, without even a helper. Empress Dowager, the most important thing in making medicine for the prince is sincerity. You must do it well and personally. Lu Mama stood at the door, provocatively speaking. Yu Yunxi sneered to herself, thinking that she couldn't make a fire or decoct medicine. Quickly lifting up her sleeves, washing the pot, and making a fire, she works very efficiently. Lu Mama originally wanted to see Yu Yunxi make a fool of herself, but this scene never happened before, which made her very angry. With her back facing Lu Mama, Yu Yunxi swapped the 2 medicine bags, and she poured all the medicine bags brought by Jianying into the water. Empress Dowager, how could I hear that the fire in the ancestral temple last night was not an accident, but rather someone intentionally did it? Lu Mama spoke to Yunxi, pulling her throat with a hint of meaning. Yu Yunxi crouched down to add fire, his expression so calm that no one could see anything unusual. Oh. So it seems that this person is really impressive. He can even fight at the regent's mansion. Empress Dowager, if you burn down the ancestral temple of the royal ancestors, you will be punished for the 9 tribes, right? Lu Mama walked step by step to her and looked down at her from a high position. Yu Yunxi put down a piece of firewood in his hand, then raised his head and casually said, "Mammy, my queen is also a person with a brain, so naturally she knows this is a serious crime." Since the Empress Dowager knows this is a serious crime, why does she still make a mistake? Lu Mama leaned down, squinting her cloudy eyes with a somewhat gloomy expression. "Mother, I don't quite understand what this means." "Don't pretend to be confused. When the ancestral temple caught fire yesterday, where was your young aunt? Some servants have said they have seen her appear on the side of the temple when the fire broke out. If there were no accidents, the Empress Dowager is already interrogating her. Empress Dowager, if you had gone to apologize to the Empress Dowager earlier, perhaps you could have saved half of your life." Lu Mama spoke with a gloomy expression, her pride rising from the corner of her eyes. Yu Yunxi's smile stiffened for a moment, and his heart tightened. No wonder I haven't seen Aunt Qing since yesterday. So. Something happened. Grandma Lu probably had been probing her since she knocked on the door. But soon, her expression returned to calm. She covered her mouth and chuckled lightly, with a bright light in her eyes. "Grandma Lu, if my mother suspects me, just call me to interrogate. But now that my mother has not said anything, you come to question me. Is that possible? Your status in the palace is even higher than that of my mother. Don't digress from the topic. Yesterday's incident must have been instigated by you, Aunt Qing. You burned the ancestral temple." Lu Mama said in a resentful tone. With a snap, Yu Yunxi's smile stopped and her eyes turned cold. She quickly raised her hand and slapped her hard. Lu Mama couldn't react quickly and slapped her face, which immediately swelled up. "How dare you hit me? Lu Mama has been bullying in this royal mansion for so many years, but recently she has been getting angry frequently here at Yunxi. She even slapped me now. How can she bear it?" Raising her sleeves, she pounced towards Yu Yunxi. Her body is much fatter than Yunxi, and she feels like a towering mountain when she rushes forward. With a gentle turn of her body, Yu Yunxi threw herself on the ground with all her feet in the air, her nose bleeding and her whole body in a state of embarrassment. The servants waiting outside the door all suppressed their laughter when they saw this scene. Lu Mama likes to abuse them on weekdays, and seeing her make a fool of herself today makes them feel happy. The queen is really extraordinary. Lu Mama, this princess is the regent princess who was personally married by the emperor. You have no evidence to accuse this princess of burning down the ancestral temple of our ancestors. Are you saying that the emperor's judgment on people is not good? This time it was Yu Yunxi's turn to look down at Lu Mama from a high position, and his voice was extremely cold. The Empress Dowager has already interrogated the young aunt next to you, so why is there no evidence? Lu Mama grinned. It's just an interrogation, not a conviction. Besides, even if it's a conviction, it's your turn to accuse this queen. Yu Yinshi let out a cold shout, and her aura made Lu Mama tremble for a moment. Her original intention to continue her arrogance was greatly reduced. Wait, I'll go find the Empress Dowager and punish you. Lu Mama gritted her teeth and got up before running out. After a while, the butler came over and personally came to the kitchen. He looked at Yu Yinshi gloating and said, "Princess, the Empress Dowager has asked you to come over." End of this chapter. Chapter 8. People from the Yu family. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. People from the Yu family, what time is it now? Upon hearing this, Yu Yinshi raised his eyes and asked such a question. They are all on the brink of death, yet they still ask what time. The butler sneered and casually replied, "Chen Shi." That's good. Yu Yinshi stood up with an extremely calm expression. Following the butler to the hall, she saw from a distance that Aunt Qing was lying on the ground, covered in whip marks and stained with blood. This appearance is very similar to the day she was forced to get married. It's a bit ironic to think so. Noticing her gaze, Aunt Qing struggled to look up and stared at her with a resentful gaze. Yu Yinshi calmly withdrew his gaze and then respectfully bowed to Empress Ning. Yinshi has seen his mother's consort. Kneel down. A teacup slammed heavily onto the ground, splashing tea and wetting her skirt and shoes. The Empress Dowager was furious, and the servants dared not breathe. Lu Mama stood on the side, her eyes filled with gloating. She doesn't know how she angered her mother, please let her know. With her back straight, She slowly looked up and calmly met Ning Taifei. Princess, you instructed your people to burn down the royal ancestral temple, which is the first crime. The servant kindly reminded you to confess to the Empress Dowager. If you don't accept it, it's okay. You even beat the servant. This is the second crime. Before Empress Ning could speak, Lu Mama jumped out and loudly accused Yu Yinshi. Upon hearing this, Yu Yinshi laughed instead. My queen is the master, and you are a servant. You have provoked my queen multiple times, and you have received a fair slap. I believe my mother also does not want to see the servant riding on the master. Yu Yinshi glanced at Concubine Ning, whose face was gloomy, and continued calmly, also, as for the matter of burning the ancestral temple that you mentioned, Lu Mama, why bother to add guilt? How could I admit something that I did not do? Qinggu has already recruited, the evidence is conclusive, and you still want to deny it. Lu Mama shouted loudly. If someone else heard this, they would definitely panic, but Yu Yinshi's face remained unchanged. She turned her head and looked at Aunt Qing with a puzzled expression. Aunt Qing, Grandma Lu said you did it. What did you do? Although Qinggu hates Yinshi now, her mind is still relatively clear. She kowtowed heavily and loudly said, report to the queen, I don't know anything. The ancestral temple has been burned, and it has nothing to do with me. Upon hearing these words, Yu Yinshi's eyes flickered slightly, and his worries in his heart were completely let go. As expected, Aunt Qing never confessed at all. They are grasshoppers on the same rope, and if she recruits, everyone will die. Lu Mama was just deceiving her just now, so she was just gambling. Even though her aunt hates her, she's not foolish. Fortunately, she made the right bet. You lowly servant, you're so stubborn. Lu Mama, seeing that the Clich As didn't work out, became angry and embarrassed, and decided to hit Aunt Qing. Lu Mama, the Empress Dowager is still here. She hasn't made a statement yet, how can you be arrogant? Yu Yinshi raised his hand and grabbed Lu Mama's wrist, sternly scolding. That's enough. Concubine Ning slapped the table heavily, her face shrouded in dark clouds, and her disgusted gaze swept over Yinshi. You've only been in the palace for 3 days, and you've made the royal mansion a mess. The AI family asked you, did you do anything about the ancestral temple? No. Yu Yinshi responded firmly. How dare you lie to the AI family? Someone has already seen your maid go to the ancestral temple. Empress Ning slapped the table again, her eyes as if she was about to kill Yu Yunqi. Yu Yunqi didn't panic either. She sighed and said, "Mother, I admit that I did ask Qinggu to go to the ancestral temple. But it wasn't for the purpose of burning the ancestral temple. I feel sorry for the prince, so I want Qinggu to burn incense for the ancestors on my behalf, so as to bless the prince." "You're arguing." Lu Mama became anxious again. Could it be that Grandma Lu saw Aunt Qing light the fire with her own eyes? Yu Yunqi turned his head and his sharp gaze fell on Grandma Lu, exuding a strong aura. "Maid, I. Lu Mama paused for a moment. Yunqi earnestly requests Empress Dowager Mingjian. I have married into the regent's mansion from the Yu family, and I am already a member of the prince's family. I hope that the prince's mansion will be better before it is too late. How could I do anything unfavorable to the prince's mansion?" At the end, Yu Yunqi's glasses turned slightly red and his voice choked up. "Isn't it just acting? She can do it too." Concubine Ning looked at Yu Yunqi with a cold expression, clearly not believing her words. "Someone, execute the AI family." Today, the AI family really wants to ask why. Upon hearing this, Yu Yunqi's eyes sank slightly. Sure enough, Ning Taifei, a woman who comes out of the deep palace, has extremely high means and a ruthless heart. She will never easily let go of her. Upon receiving the order, Lu Mama smiled coldly as she lifted her sleeves and quickly walked over. She is going to torment this slut to the point where life feels like death today. Just as Lu Mama was about to grip Yu Yunqi with both hands, the servant at the door hurriedly came to report. "Empress Dowager, the people from the Prime Minister's office have arrived." This statement froze Lu Mama's movements. And a gentle curve curved at the corner of Yunqi's mouth. She just asked the butler for the time, hoping to confirm the time when you came to her house. Today is the third day after getting married, so it is reasonable for her to return home. But Feng Yili's situation was special, so the night before yesterday, Empress Ning had someone send a message to the Yu family, asking them to personally come to the royal mansion. Her good father may not have the same status as a royal, but at least he is the prime minister. This face. The Empress Dowager should give some. Yunqi's smile did not last long, as she heard the servant add another sentence. Accompanying him is His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince. What is he doing here? A hint of disgust flashed in Yu Yunqi's eyes. Surprisingly, the Crown Prince has also come. Princess Ning quickly stood up with a slightly serious expression. After a moment of silence, she glanced coldly at Yu Yunqi and Aunt Qing before saying, "Someone, take this lowly maid to the mansion doctor's place. The Queen and the AI family will welcome you. Is this a matter of temporarily not pursuing the ancestral temple?" Yu Yunqi lowered her eyes, and the only variable she had anticipated was the sudden visit of the Crown Prince. After a while, several figures appeared at the door. "I have seen the Empress Dowager before." Yu Zhong bowed to Empress Ning with maturity and skill. "My daughter, Yu Wanrong, has met the Empress Dowager." The woman, dressed in pink, with a skin as white as condensed fat, also spoke coquettishly. "She is Yu Wanrong, the legitimate daughter of the Yu family." Ning Taifei responded with a soft smile, and then her gaze fell on the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince's graceful demeanor, sword eyebrows and phoenix eyes, was dressed in a white robe with cloud patterns embroidered on the cuffs, exuding a cool and elegant temperament. Why did the Crown Prince come today? She probed. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. The Crown Prince's Exploration. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 The Crown Prince's Exploration. Empress Dowager Ankang, I heard that today is the day when Uncle Jiuhuang and Aunt Jiuhuang return home, so I took the opportunity to visit Uncle Jiuhuang. Feng Weizhou explained in a low voice, and his remaining light glanced in the direction of Yu Yunqi, making her feel uneasy all over. You have a heart. Ning Taifei pulled out a smile and let them sit down. Miss Yu's legitimate daughter, isn't she? She is truly born for her legitimate mother, and indeed has the demeanor of a lady from a wealthy family. Is there a betrothal family? I believe according to your upbringing, your husband's family won't worry after getting married. After sipping a cup of tea, Empress Ning looked at Yu Wanrong and slowly opened her mouth. When she said these words, many people present had a slight change in their faces. She was clearly deliberately satirizing Yu Yunxi, a commoner who had no family support, causing her husband's family to worry. Yu Wanrong's cheeks turned slightly red, and she said in a gentle voice, "The Empress Dowager has praised her. My daughter has not yet been married." She secretly glanced at the direction of Feng Weizhou, clenched her handkerchief tightly, feeling extremely shy. Empress Dowager, Yunxi had a stubborn temperament when she was at home. I believe she must have caused you a lot of trouble by marrying into the royal family. Yu Zhongqing coughed lightly and hesitated before speaking out. I can't say it's troublesome. Who made the regent's mansion urgently need a queen now? As for whether this queen is virtuous or not, it doesn't matter, Ning Taifei snorted coldly. The atmosphere once again cooled down. Yu Zhongqing quickly looked at Yu Yunxi with disgusted eyes. He is accusing her of embarrassing him. I heard that on the day the princess got married, Yu Xiang, you never saw her out. I believe your father and daughter still have a lot to say. When the AI family is tired, you can just chat. Princess Ning's politeness cannot be sustained for long. She walked straight towards the Fengwei boat and her attitude instantly softened. Crown Prince, didn't you say you wanted to come and see your 9th emperor uncle? Let the AI family go with you. Okay, Feng Weizhou nodded and swept his gaze over Yu Yunxi, who was not far away without a trace. Soon, there were only the father and daughter of the Yu family left here. When you got married, didn't your stepmother teach you? Don't bring shame to the Yu family. What did you do in the palace to make the Empress Dowager angry? Yu Zhongqing was furious and shouted loudly at Yu Yunxi. Can the father care about how his daughter came these days before causing trouble in the palace? Also, can the father explain to his daughter about the burial? Yu Yunxi turned his head, his cold gaze paired with Yu Zhong. Are you blaming me for being a father? Yu Zhongqing became even more angry, with a gloomy expression on his face. Father, my sister probably got angry at the Wang mansion, so she spoke a bit hastily. Don't be angry. Yu Wanrong quickly walked over and patted Yu Zhongqing's back very thoughtfully, giving him a good breath. After finishing these things, she turned her head and said to Yunxi with guilt, Sister, it's all because of me. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to suffer here. There are only the 3 of us here. You should put aside your hypocritical demeanor. After all, I have no intention of acting with you, Yu Yunxi sneered. What attitude are you having? Do you know how worried Ronger is about you? She's afraid that you're not doing well in the palace, so she insisted on coming to see you today. You're so ignorant. Yu Zhongqing's face darkened once again. Is that so? Since she is so worried about me, why didn't she stop me when I was forced to get on the bridal sedan chair? Yu Yunxi asked coldly. Sister, I am in love with His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. If I marry the regent, won't I let him down? I always thought you could understand me, sister. Yu Wanrong bit her lower lip, tears rolling in her eyes, as if I still pity her. Upon seeing this, Yu Zhongqing felt very distressed. You wicked woman, behave like your mother, extremely jealous and selfish. He strode towards Yu Yunxi, raised his hand, and slapped him hard before he could strike. Faced with his anger, Yu Yunxi's eyes lit up, and she quickly leaned back and dodged the slap. Just as Zhongqing was about to take action, she coldly warned, Father, do you need your daughter to remind you? This is the regent's mansion, and I am the regent's princess. So what? If the regent has any major issues, you're just a buried queen. Yu Zhongqing was angry and blurted out his words. He is the only one in the world who curses the father who buried his daughter. Yu Yunxi sarcastically shrugged her shoulders. Fortunately, she had already seen through the faces of this family, so now she wouldn't be sad about the so-called family affection. Father, there was something my daughter couldn't figure out at first. Yu Yunxi patted the non-existent creases on his sleeve and casually opened his mouth. The prince has an accident and needs to find someone to celebrate. Why does it happen to be the daughter of the Yu family? Do you really think it's because the birth date and 8 characters match? What do you mean? Yu Zhongqing is truly an old fox who has been immersed in lust for many years. His face turned cold and his eyes immediately narrowed. Yu Yunxi yawned lazily and continued, at least after a father-daughter fight, my daughter reminded me to stop here. If there is a good or bad relationship between me and the prince, the first thing to happen is the Yu family. After abandoning these words, Yu Yunxi turned around and left directly. 3 days ago, she really thought it was just an ordinary celebration, but after discovering that Feng Yili was poisoned, she understood that the person who wanted Feng Yili to die must be among the emperor and the national teacher. As for why she is involved, it can only be blamed on her surname. Although the emperor has already established a crown prince, he is in his prime and naturally cannot allow the crown prince's power to grow. Over the years, the Yu family has held great power, but they are so close to the crown prince. How could the emperor feel at ease? Since ancient times, the emperor has used every means to strike powerful officials. If the regent dies after she marries, then a hat that opposes the royal family will be tied to the head of the family. For this matter, Yu Yunxi ignored whether her good father could understand the meaning behind her words. After all, regardless of whether the family is safe or not, she is just a pawn they can abandon at will. If you want to save your life, you have to rely on yourself. She wandered around the backyard until she heard the servant say that the Empress Dowager had left, and then she felt relieved to go back. As she put down all her guard and pushed open the door, she saw the Crown Prince Feng Weizhou sitting inside sipping tea, with Feng Yili's cold jade coffin beside him. Seeing this, Yu Yunxi wanted to turn around and leave. As a result, Feng Weizhou asked coldly, "This palace is not a beast that eats people. Why are you so afraid to see this palace?" "Sorry, Your Highness the Crown Prince, my daughter. I am not afraid of you, I simply dislike seeing you." Yu Yunxi stopped and choked. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. The Crown Prince Empresses her as a concubine. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. The Crown Prince empresses her as a concubine. Upon hearing Yu Yunxi's words, Feng Weizhou smiled instead of being angry. He stood up and looked at her with a meaningful expression in his eyes. "But because I came with Ronger today, did you taste it?" "What?" Yu Yunxi's face was filled with panic. He might have a brain problem. A despicable person with scum, made in heaven and earth. What does she have to eat? At Yunxi, the promise of our palace remains valid. Feng Weizhou knocked on the chair and said in a deep voice. "Promise. The Crown Prince's promise is to marry me as a concubine." Yu Yunxi asked with a smile on his face. Speaking of this, she really wants to give him a knife. People say that His Highness the Crown Prince is gentle and elegant, with a clear breeze and a clear moon. Every woman in the capital secretly admires him. Only she thinks he is a hypocrite full of moral beauty. When her mother was alive, she saved 3 people with medical skills. One is Taizu, the second is Empress, and the third is her good father. My mother is good at everything, but her taste is hard to agree with. The people saved are getting worse and worse one by one. When the Empress was poisoned in the harem, her mother made a promise to her when she offered to help. That is when they encounter difficulties in the Prime Minister's mansion in the future, the Empress can lend a helping hand. In addition, when she was young, she followed her mother into the palace and even pulled a wind maintenance boat that almost drowned. When the Empress was forced to death in the Prime Minister's mansion, she remained silent. The night before she was forced to remarry, she knelt in front of the East Palace and begged for their mother and son's help. Who knew that when Feng Weizhou appeared, he said, "If you become a concubine of this palace can help you. Your Highness, thank you for your kindness. Unfortunately, I am not fortunate enough to enjoy it. I will walk slowly without seeing you off." Yu Yunshi withdrew his thoughts, lowered his eyes, and said coldly, "Do you feel aggrieved to become a concubine in this palace?" Feng Weizhou narrowed his eyes and spoke in a somewhat dissatisfied tone. "Your Highness, the Crown Prince, is like a person in heaven, not something we can imagine. Also, being someone else's concubine and causing me and my children to suffer insults is not something I can tolerate," Yu Yunshi said in a low voice. She saw her mother's suffering and didn't want to take this path anymore. "So, would you rather be the concubine of Uncle Jiuhuang and die with him?" Feng Weizhou's face cooled down, with a hint of anger in his eyes. The Crown Prince is cautious in his words. Our prince is very determined and will not die easily. Yu Yunshi immediately refuted his words. Our prince. You're just married to him for 3 days, yet you're protecting him like this. Feng Weizhou's tone became increasingly unpleasant. The prince is my husband, and he is also a hero who stands tall and upright. His appearance, strategy, and talent are all exceptional. This princess likes such a person, so what's wrong with protecting him? Yu Yunshi continued to refute loudly. Although she couldn't really negotiate with Feng Yili, she felt that he must be much better than a hypocritical gentleman like Feng Weizhou. Feng Weizhou's face turned black, and after a long time, he laughed angrily. Well, don't you just dislike the fact that your identity as a concubine is not on the table? How about this palace granting you the position of a concubine? I can think of a way to take you out and then give you a new identity to enter the Eastern Palace, but you have to give me something, he said quietly. What is it? Yu Yunshi raised his eyebrows with a curious expression. She couldn't think of anything else worth the Crown Prince's consideration, as she was so down and out. Upon hearing her tone, Feng Weizhou thought she was tempted and quickly said, I remember your mother left you a warm jade back then. As long as you give it to me, I can carry you into the East Palace tomorrow. Warm jade. Yu Yunshi's eyelids twitched fiercely, her red lips pursed tightly. Why did he stare at his mother's jade pendant? What do you want a jade pendant for? She frowned and asked. You don't have to worry about it, Feng Weizhou said with a stern expression, unwilling to elaborate. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't give anyone what my mother left me, which disappointed your highness the crown prince. Yu Yunshi restrained his expression and spoke coldly. Yu Yunshi. Feng Weizhou was completely annoyed when she saw that her oil and salt didn't enter. Please go back, crown prince. It's time for me to feed the prince medicine now. Yu Yunshi began to issue orders. Staring at her for a long time, Feng Weizhou could only leave in anger. Yu Yunshi looked up and saw Yu Wanrong standing behind the big tree in the yard. Her expression twisted, and the handkerchief in her hand was almost torn apart. She must have heard Feng Weizhou's words just now. Sister, the jade pendant that the crown prince just mentioned, but the jade pendant you took from your mother's hand. Yu Wanrong took a deep breath, pulled out a gentle smile, and then walked over with lotus steps. Seize. That's returning the things to their original owners, right? Yu Yunshi sarcastically said. Yu Wanrong's smile stiffened, but she quickly regained calmness. She coquettishly said, It's just a jade pendant. Can you give it to me, sister? Can I compensate you with the rest? Although she didn't know why the crown prince insisted on obtaining Yu Yunshi's jade pendant, she never allowed Yu Yunshi to use it to gain the opportunity to enter the Eastern Palace. The crown prince can only be hers, no slut has the right to compete with her. Watching Yu Wanrong almost unable to hide her jealousy, Yu Yunshi only felt amused. She sarcastically said, Yu Wanrong, instead of being on guard against me, it's better for you to find a way to fight for it yourself. There are so many noble daughters from good families in the capital, and any one of them is qualified to become a crown princess. Also, your surname is Yu, and you are the daughter of the Prime Minister. Based on this, the Emperor cannot marry you. After saying these heart-stopping words, Yu Yunxi slammed the door shut, making Yu Wanrong furious outside. Inside, Yu Yunxi quickly returned to the side of the cold jade coffin, carefully pulling open Feng Yili's collar. Nguanyu is still here. She breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately she was not discovered by the wind maintenance boat. However, why did Feng Guizhu obtain this warm jade? She recalled in her mind what her mother had said. It could save her life in critical moments. Her doubts grew even heavier in her heart. Princess. At this moment, Jiang Ying flipped through the window again. Yu Yunxi regained her senses and quickly put the jade pendant back on Feng Yili's heart. Princess, are you okay? Jiang Ying asked anxiously. It seems that he also knows what happened in the hall. No problem, she said in a low voice. Just as there was a knock on the door, she asked Jiang Ying not to speak and quickly walked to open the door. The maid brought the medicine and said, Princess, this is the prince's medicine. Okay. Without Lu Mama following, things would be much easier to handle. Without her instructions, Jiang Ying quickly lifted their master out. Stripped off his clothes, Yu Yunxi said. Ah. Jiang Ying was stunned. What? Why acupuncture and moxibustion without undressing? Don't hurry. Yes, princess. Yu Yunxi's momentum at that moment made Jiang Ying feel like she was facing the prince. He quickly followed suit, and soon, Feng Yili was stripped of only a pair of obscene pants. Yu Yunxi got ready for acupuncture and moxibustion. When he looked back at the scene, his heart sank slightly and his expression was complicated. End of this chapter.